Free for All on Fox 4. Weeknights at 10:30 and Sunday nights at 10 o'clock. And we are live on, I guess, what they call the World Wide Web, something like that?
They do call it that.
The streaming thing I've been hearing.
That's what the kids call it,
kids
streaming.
have been talking about. We're clearly going much more casual here on the stream. I've got the tie loosened.
I've got the jeans.
Sam's got the blue
Nikes
jeans
right here.
I think maybe we should have like cool hip nicknames for this show. How about I'm the Deuce Man and you're the G?
Just call me
show.
that. Yeah, let's do that.
The
G. I like it.
And Jeff Kolb, or J-Dog as we like to call him, will be joining us from the Star in Frisco coming up. We are, I guess, about 4 hours from the start of the NFL draft, which is being staged in Green Bay at Lambeau Field. I don't know how many years it's been now. It was always in New York every year, but they've started going to different locations. They had it here, of course, not long ago. So Lambeau will be kind of a cool location. This temperature's like in the upper 40s, low 50s, just to set the mood there tonight.
Yeah, and as far as this Cowboys fan base, Mike, I think ever since the season ended, they've been a little restless. They obviously have a new head coach now, and Brian Schottenheimer made some moves in free agency. We'll get to those departures and arrivals in a second, but I think Cowboys fans want to see this front office hit on this draft this year, draft and develop.
A lot of needs, a lot of speculation, obviously, and some disagreement among prognosticators as to where the Cowboys will look with that first pick at 12 overall. Dallas has 10 picks in all in this draft. The first rounder at number 12, second, third rounder, 2 in the 5th, 2 in the 6th, and 3 in the 7th round. Of course, the Cowboys War Room at the Star in Frisco is where all the activity will happen for that franchise tonight. Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, scouting director Will McClay, who really, to be honest, is the guy who does most of the of the advance work for this draft. He and his scouting staff. New coach Brian Schottenheimer, as Sam said, involved in the process as well. How involved? Who knows? That's always speculation when it comes to the Cowboys head coach, but it's Schotty's first draft in that position. A couple of days ago, we were treated to some of the ramblings from Jerry at that pre-draft news conference.
There's never been, ever, since I've owned this team, a draft pick that I didn't in any way really get the input from who it is that would help solve the problem. No way. I looked at Will, boy, when we're getting ready to pick, I'll look at him, and if he even blinks, I'll look what he's blinking about when we're getting ready to pick, and I'll measure Shedeur, or I'll be looking back there at Flus at this particular time and looking for body language, looking for conviction, looking for that kind of thing. Now, that's on top of the arduous process of evaluating them by standards that are really, we're in agreement so much. We're one of the best drafting teams in the NFL. I'll say that. We are. We are not in the business around here at this time of looking for our future quarterback. By the same token, the fact that we are sitting up here, we have to always be thinking about the future quarterback. And we have to mainly be thinking about what happens if we don't have Dak. I get a lot of criticism for being as involved as I am and having the record that I've got for being involved, let's say, about players, draft players and what have you. And I know that there's a lot of criticism there. The alternative to that is you couldn't be more on the incentive plan. And the incentive plan has to do more. If it's a mess, I live with it.
I've thoroughly enjoyed the process, the conversations, the disagreements, quite honestly, and then watching the kind of the conviction when you ultimately put the final grade on a player it's been awesome. And I feel really good heading into Thursday night.
And Shotty's already shown me, I sit beside him, and he's already shown me he'll work my ass over.
Can you decode that one?
It's the stream. We can say whatever we want, and Jerry can say whatever he wants as well. Hey, J-Dog joins us now from the Star in Frisco.
Home Run Derby champ.
Yeah, Home Run
Media
Derby
portion.
champ. That's right. Congratulations. What up, dog? What are you hearing? What are you hearing out there at the Star? Cowboys at 12. Most people think wide receiver. Starting to hear some other things as well. It's always a fun few hours as the again, the speculation, I've used that word 7 times already, but ramps up before that first pick at 12 for the Cowboys.
I didn't know if J-Dog at first was me or Jerry Jones. I'll have to ask him if he's ever gone by that title before. Yeah, guys, obviously a ton of speculation about what might happen at 12. I think first and foremost, when you think about the 12th pick, we think back to 2021. Turned out pretty well with Micah Parsons, of course. He's coming up on a massive contract extension that may or may not happen anytime soon. Of course, a lot of chatter about that. You know, when you think back to that night, we were so focused on the cornerback position, and would it be Patrick Surtain? Would it be J.C. Horn? And you watch those guys go off the board, and then it's Micah Parsons. And if you remember, which I'm sure a lot of Cowboys fans and people around the NFL have kind of forgotten about this, there was a mixed reaction in a sense to that Micah pick. This is a guy that had some off-field concerns heading into that draft, not necessarily the position, again, that was targeted as far as top need, which really was cornerback at that time. And obviously that's worked out really well. And so you wonder what might happen here at 12 when we think about some of the needs for this team. Obviously, receiver is right up there at the top, and that's, I think, the one that's been talked about the most. If Teteroya McMillan out of Arizona is there, I think a lot of people feel like that is the obvious choice, but will he be there? And so if he's not, I think one of the top options for this team, if they can pull it off, would be to trade back with how much chatter there is about so many prospects in the middle and later part of this first round potentially are grouped so closely together on draft boards. And so you wonder, there's been some chatter about, would Denver be a trade partner coming up for number 20? Of course, Sean Payton, close ties to this franchise. I think the Cowboys, would really feel very good potentially about being able to trade back and recoup a pick, and it's something that hasn't been so rare lately, guys. Last year it happened when they traded down to pick Tyler Guyton, and they wound up with a third-round choice who wound up being another starter on that offensive line, Cooper Beebe. Of course, Guyton, the jury's still out there, so offensive line, if it's not receiver, very well could be a pick at number 12 as well.
That's a good point, Jeff, about them possibly trading back. And that is something that you're hearing right now. Jerry talked about them being a good drafting team. And I think you could argue for the most part in terms of first round picks, they have been. But you could also argue they've whiffed on each of the last two. As you said, the jury out. That's putting it kindly on Guyton, the number one pick last year. Mozzie Smith, has frankly been a bust so far. But then Tyler Smith, Micah, and CD, in successive years there. And all the way back to 2018, Leighton Vander Esch, who was a solid pick at number one or in the first round for the Cowboys too. Also, Jeff, one thing, and we all follow this stuff so closely, and you wonder, I'm always a little cynical when I hear one position group being mentioned so often and so many of the mocks going with wide receiver, that you wonder, Jeff, if there might be a little misdirection coming from the Cowboys camp in terms of floating that out there in the hopes that the guy they really want is still there at 12. Like you said, maybe a defensive player even.
Yeah, maybe Michael Williams out of Georgia, an edge rusher that has a ton of potential and is someone that the jury has been mixed on as well, but could be someone that slots in very nicely with Micah Parsons. A cornerback, I know, another position of need, and you just wonder, there's so much that we don't know about what the Cowboys draft board is, and that's one thing that really stood out to me being here on Tuesday for the pre-draft press conference. Was Jerry and Stephen Jones came right out and said, here we are, it's 3 days before the draft, our draft board, it's not even set yet. And I wonder how things really have been different. Of course, this is the first time through with Brian Schottenheimer as the head coach. We will be really fascinated to see what type of influence he does have. Of course, there's only so much that we get a window into that, although we do get to see images inside that draft room. You remember times where Mike McCarthy looked pretty adamant in moments before certain picks. And so, one thing that I really stood out to me from Jerry's comments on Tuesday was when the running back position came up. And obviously that is a position that has been widely talked about. I don't think the Ashton Jeanty dream is coming true for this team. I don't think that guy's headed home here, but it was really quite the opposite as far as what Jerry said about that position. he said, running back wasn't the issue last year, it was the offensive line. Now, is that just total misdirection and they wind up going with a guy like Hampton, even if it's Genty already gone? I'll be really interested to see if they would go that high on a running back, especially after passing on guys like Saquon Barkley in free agency the other year.
Yeah, you're hearing more maybe Henderson from Ohio State or Caleb Johnson from Iowa in one of the later rounds at running back as well.
Yeah, Jeff, you mentioned the running back position, and the good thing for the Cowboys is that this is a deep running back class. So maybe they'll get a running back in that second round. In terms of the first round picks, though, you touched on this too, Mike. They have had a lot of success drafting in that first round. Since 2010, the Cowboys' first round picks have been a combined 40 Pro Bowl nods. Most of any team in the league, 10 of their last 14 picks have made it to at least one Pro Bowl. Jeff, you said it too with Jerry. He loves to keep people guessing. What was your biggest takeaway at that pre-draft presser on Tuesday?
Again, that offensive line comment stood out to me. Now, should we just totally believe that that's really where their focus is with this number 12 pick? Which, I don't think it's unfair to think if some of the receivers like Tet McMillan and Matthew Golden are gone at 12, that offensive line very well could be the next place that they look, depending on what run we see in the top 10 with the offensive linemen. A lot of talented offensive linemen in this draft. I just think that that's such a huge position of need, especially when you think about some of the issues with Guyton last year and how much confidence do you have in him. And so you think about a pick that can really impact not only the position that player slots in at, but guys around him. I think the offensive line is a key spot for that. But we will see. Again, I think the Cowboys will be open to taking calls. Jerry said the minute you pick up the phone, though, and you try to orchestrate a trade, you've lost. And so it will be really interesting to see if Jerry would pick up the phone or what kind of calls he receives. Of course, he teased after that press conference here that he was working on a couple of trades. We'll see if there's any truth to that tonight.
All right, J-Dog, at the Star, I'll let you think of a nickname for your photojournalist, Chris Hanks, there. Let me know how that goes. We'll be back with you often here throughout the hour at our draft special. It's worth, Sam, reviewing some key free agency losses for the Cowboys, and there are significant ones. Zach Martin, of course, retiring. Lawrence moving on, as did Jordan Lewis and Chauncey Golston. We talk running back. Dowdle is a Panther now. Brandon Cook's a Saint. The reliable backup quarterback Cooper Rush on to Baltimore, and the Trey Lance experiment ended quite soon. Some guys coming back as well, though, re-signings for the Cowboys.
Yeah, that would be Osa Odigizua, defensive tackle, Kavante Turpin, wide receiver, returner CJ Goodwin, Brock Hoffman, Brian Anger, Marquise Bell, Monye Thomas, Tyrus Wheat, Trent Sieg as well.
In terms of free agents, the Cowboys added veteran defensive tackle Solomon Thomas, the kid from Coppell. Dante Fowler is back. Sanborn, the linebacker. A couple of veteran running backs, Williams and Sanders. Elam, the corner. And Milton, kind of an intriguing backup quarterback option there, acquired via trade. Kenneth Murray, the linebacker here, via trade as well. We're just getting started on our draft special. Jeff talked with Star-Telegram Cowboys reporter Nick Harris about potential selections for Dallas. One guy we're hearing about a lot, and we talked about him already, is that wide receiver from Arizona.
NFL draft around the corner, an important one as always for the Dallas Cowboys. And Nick, I know one guy you think might be a good pick for this team, wide receiver Tetairoa McMillan.
Yeah, absolutely. Tetairoa McMillan, one of the strongest receiver prospects in this entire class. For me, he's the top receiver in this draft. You talk about 6'4", 200 pounds, and he can jump out of the building. Athleticism is unreal. That athleticism goes back to his volleyball background. He was one of the top volleyball prospects in the entire country coming out of Anaheim Servite High School in Southern California. You see how that's translated to him being a possession-type receiver. The Cowboys haven't had a possession-type receiver since Des Bryant. They could certainly go get their guy to pair with CeeDee Lamb. I think Tetairoa McMillan makes a lot of sense at number 12 if he's available. We'll see if it's McMillan to the Cowboys out of Arizona in the upcoming draft. Nick Harris, great to get you back on the show.
All right, Sam, in terms of a media guest, the draft is not official until we talk to this guy, right?
You can't get better than Norm talking the draft, right? The preparation is endless.
Norm knows everything about every potential pick, and we are talking with the Radio Hall of Famer next. Hey, Deuce Man and the G back here just kind of informally rapping about the draft.
Kicking it.
On the interweb. On the radio, Norm Hitzges has been doing draft coverage like the entire draft since the 80s. We had him on TV the other night. Just amazing.
Before we did our interview with him, he showed me the huge book that he has with tabs, just organization. He starts preparation even before the summertime. So it's amazing to see that he's been able to do this for so long.
Even though he's not doing his talk show every day on the ticket anymore, he's still a big part of their draft coverage starting at 7 o'clock tonight. We talked, as we mentioned, with Norm, who has strong opinions on what he thinks the Cowboys should do in this draft.
I think the Eagles won the Super Bowl because they kicked the living hell out of people at the line of scrimmage. Their defensive lines and offensive lines were, I think, measurably combined the best in the NFL. The Cowboys should be doing their lines. They should be stocking it with better people. But the franchise now says it wants to draft outside in, which is wide receivers, running backs, things like that, instead of big guys who drool for a living.
With that in mind, the Cowboys, most prognosticators feel, will go with a wide receiver with their first selection at number 12, assuming they don't trade up or down from that spot. It's interesting to me, Norm, because they already have an all-pro level wide receiver in CeeDee Lamb. So you're taking with your first selection a guy whom you don't even expect to be the number one player at his position on your team. I think that's maybe that's a negative way to look at it. I don't know. It's a long way of me asking, do you think that's the direction the Cowboys will go at 12?
It seems to be a lot of people pointing in that direction, seem to have some feel for what the franchise is going to do. I very much agree with you, Mike. They're drafting, if they do this at number 12, take a wide receiver, they're taking number 2 wide receiver. CeeDee Lamb is signed forever. This guy is going to be a number 2 receiver. And look at the last 3 years, what this club has done to try to get a number 2 receiver. They traded for Brandon Cooks, used a number 3 draft choice on Jalen Tolbert, traded this year's 4 for Jonathan Mingo, used a 6 on Ryan Flournoy, a 7 on Jalen Brooks, and this year they signed free agent Paris Campbell. Phew. And none of those people they think is a number 2 wide receiver.
Norm, what are the biggest areas of need in your mind in terms of the Cowboys, and can they afford to just go with the best available player?
Well, Sam, they've got so many holes, they almost can justify any player they take as the best player available, and that player will fit a hole here. My number 1 need would be to push Mozzie Smith out of a starting job. He just is dreadful rating-wise after 2 years. And I also think that if they're going to build their offensive line, they seem to be thinking, oh, no, Tyler Guyton will be fine next year. I don't want to take that chance that he'll be fine next year. I think he belongs on the right side of playing guard or tackle, and I think this club needs a left tackle. Those would be my 2 areas. Obviously, they're going to draft a runner, obviously. And they've got to draft at least 1 corner. But again, I'd be looking to beef up the 2 lines on this team.
Jerry held court at his news conference earlier in the week and said that the Cowboys have been a good drafting team. I know it's difficult to declare one way or another because there's so many nuances to a draft, Norm. But by and large, over the last decade, 10, 15 years, would you say this team has drafted well?
You know, I think they're a pretty good drafting team, Mike. But there's a third word. Everybody uses draft and develop, draft and develop. Draft, develop, and keep. The Cowboys have found some really nice NFL players, but they're gone now. Tyler Biadasz, Dorrance Armstrong, Connor McGovern, Tony Pollard, Dalton Schultz, all those people were middle round draft choices that the Cowboys hit on, but they didn't keep them. And one of the keys to building a franchise is when you hit on someone like that, you find a way to keep someone like that. But the salary structure here is so far out of whack that it makes the Cowboys' job doing that very difficult. The Cowboys have to come out of this draft with something that fills, not in this order, defensive tackle, running back, wide receiver, and the spot nobody's talking about, cornerback.
Norm Hitzges anchoring the Tickets draft coverage starting at 7 o'clock on Thursday night. Nobody's done it longer and nobody's done it better than the Radio Hall of Famer. Norm, thanks so much for your time. Enjoy the draft, my friend.
Kids, I always love being with you.
Norm just so calm, cool, and collected throughout it all. All right.
He called us kids. I like
He did.
that.
Our Jeff Kolb, or J-Dog, as we've been calling you throughout the show. You're back live at the Star with us. And Jeff, we were talking about this, just how popular the draft has gotten, even in the last decade. I mean, I have friends every year who base their vacations around the draft just to go and travel for the weekend. So it's kind of neat to see in the ratings for the draft even do better than a lot of sporting events. What's your take on that?
I think it's awesome how they've moved the draft to these different locations. I'm so fascinated to see. I mean, there's not a whole lot going on in Green Bay, right? I've never personally been, but I know, Deuce, you've definitely been up there, right? You know, it's pretty much Lambeau, and that's kind of that. And so I'm fascinated to see what this will look like tonight up there. You know, I remember when they had the draft in Nashville, like to see the whole thing take over Broadway and just the big party that it becomes. And then, of course, you know, some of the pick announcers we see on day two. I know Travis Frederick, Cowboys legend, will be up there to make a pick, a Wisconsin guy this year. You know, we've seen Drew Pearson make picks, and some of the positive and Philadelphia reaction, I'll put it, to that. And so it's just a lot of fun to see how people have embraced the draft, even given the fact that 99% of us don't really know much about most of the guys that will be picked.
Well, Jeff, you know, a lot of us from the Midwest think that Green Bay is kind of a big deal, but I would understand why you snobby Northeasterners wouldn't understand that. Real quick, it's kind of a rainy night, so I don't know how much is going to be going on out in the plaza at the Star tonight in terms of fan stuff. What's the media scene like? Do they have free food for you guys? Are they going to feed you?
J-Dog upstairs, Jerry, he should have a good spread. He usually does come through on that along with these first-round picks. The Super Bowl is still a thing, you know, work in progress. So I know they're moving the fan part inside to the Star, to the field. And so that's where it was when Parsons was picked. And so maybe there will be some good mojo there with number 12.
We were all there for that one.
There'll be some fun fan stuff inside the Ford Center there tonight, I'm sure, as well. Jeff, J-Dog, stand by. We'll be back with you in just a few minutes, brother. Again, most feel that the Cowboys will go wide receiver at 12. Here's Jeff now again, talking about a strong possibility at wide out, again with Nick Harris from the Star Telegram.
As we continue to get ready for this upcoming NFL draft, a lot of people are curious, will wide receiver be what the Cowboys use that number 12 overall pick on in the first round? If they do, one guy who has the speed to fit in nicely next to CeeDee Lamb, Matthew Golden out of Texas.
Yes, certainly. There's going to be a lot of options, I think, in the first round for the Dallas Cowboys. And if they are sitting there at number 12 and a guy like Teteroa McMillan is off the board from Arizona, I think they could still land on a really talented prospect with a first-round grade. And Matthew Golden, as you mentioned, he was the fastest guy of any player at the Combine. He was huge for the Texas offense last year. He's from Texas, went to Houston to start his college career before landing with the Longhorns. This is a guy that would pair schematically with CeeDee Lamb so well. It would give Dak Prescott another weapon, something he desperately needed at times last year before he got hurt. Matthew Golden, a dynamic weapon that would work out for Dallas.
A UT draft pick that's paired well lately, of course, with DeMar Van Overshown. Dallas learned that just a couple years ago.
All right, guys, a couple of young men who played high school football in North Texas are likely to be major stories in round one of the draft. We hear from one next.
Fox 4's NFL draft preview. Why are you laughing right now? Mike's just excited to see who the Cowboys are going to pick at number 12. Yeah. You know, Texas, we know, is a hotbed for talent when it comes to college football players going to the next level, to the NFL local. There will be a few local kids who will get drafted, most likely in this first round. Possibly Colorado, Shedeur Sanders, one of the biggest names, if not the biggest name in this draft, of course. Deion Sanders' son, so that's going to be intriguing to see where he winds up.
Yeah, it really is. Back in November of 2019, Jeff Kolb reported on Shedeur's success locally here at Trinity Christian High School.
Deion has coached two of his sons as the offensive coordinator at Trinity Christian Cedar Hill. Shiloh, now a defensive back at South Carolina. Prime's other son at Trinity Christian, Shedeur, is currently the quarterback. And last week I got to sit down with Shedeur to talk with him about how he's writing his own football story with his dad on the sideline and the cameras focused on him.
They got to live their own life. I don't want them to walk in my shoes. My shoes don't fit. It don't fit.
What's it like to be Deion's son?
To be Deion's son, it's pros and cons. Pros is, I mean, everybody knows you. And the cons is everybody knows you. So, like, wherever you go, there's a target. So, like, you just got to be prepared at all times.
He's always had a Hall of Fame last name to live up to. But Shedeur Sanders has never run from the spotlight. He's welcomed it and thrived in it.
Play action on second down. Shedeur Sanders airing it out. It's caught for a touchdown.
In fact, Shedeur's had more eyes on him as a high school kid than Deion did. Followed around by multiple cameras every day as part of a weekly YouTube series produced by Overtime, wearing a microphone every time he takes the field.
Do you ever get tired of having the mic on?
No, I don't really get tired of it. But, like, sometimes I just make sure I stay focused every week for the game, for the opponent. So I don't really it doesn't really faze me.
Every Saturday, Shedeur gets to watch an episode from his life, along with hundreds of thousands of people. Unlike most kids, Shedeur might get home from school to a visit from some Dallas Cowboys legends.
I wanted Shedeur to stop by so he can understand balling at a whole nother level.
What are you doing now?
I can't.
I don't know who the arm is. Who's the arm?
I'm expecting them to tell me stories about what happened back in the past. But instead, Mr. Charles Haley started firing me up.
Oh, my God, Deion. What do you teach these dumb kids?
What do you learn from that, watching yourself every Saturday?
What I learned that, like, basically just how I look through somebody else's eyes.
We on TV, man! Run him over!
The real pressure has been from Pops, driving him to be great, and now coaching him at quarterback as the Trinity Christian Cedar Hill offensive coordinator.
He's just been tough on me, like, all throughout when I was growing up.
It's a full-on race. I mean, every day, all day. And he's a son, so he wants to make his dad proud.
How you feel?
Good. Calm.
Let's do this, man.
He wants to play well, of course, for his team and his coaches. But he wants to upstage him at some point. And it's a cat and mouse game because Prime won't let him do it. And it's so funny to see it, man, because it just keeps pushing Shedeur to be that much better every week.
The hard work is starting to pay off. He's a 4-star QB recruit in the class of 2021 with offers from some of the top college programs in the nation. But as Deion knows, there's a lot that goes into a quarterback's college choice.
You got to really think about the decision you're going to make because it has some real ramifications. Is the system going to be something that suffices for him? Is the coach going to be there, for the next several years?
Shedeur Sanders knows his last name will only get him so far. And with the spotlight on, he's working to show his game can get him to the highest level.
I tell him all the time, man, I'll see you on Sunday. I'll see you on Sunday. I'll watch you one day at 12 or 3 on primetime night playing on Sunday.
Now I just got to prove to everybody that the name is true. Like, I'm just not just Deion Sanders' son. I am top quarterback in the nation.
Stay safe, all right? Love you.
Right now, the Trinity Christian football team is going for its 3rd straight TAP state title. I asked head coach Andre Hart what it looks like when Deion and Shedeur find each other after winning a championship. He told me after going at each other all season long, that moment is like the end of a romantic movie. Mike?
Jeff, we're going to talk about Shedeur in a moment. But first, we go from babyface Jeff to grown man Jeff back at the
You
Star.
got the beard going too. That was 6 years ago, 2019.
It took 6 years. It took 6 years for this, okay? I've been working hard, okay?
The viewers want to know,
Baby J has become Bearded J.
Are you going to stick with the beard for a while?
100%. I don't know that this is ever going away because I can't deal with that anymore. So a lot has changed in 6 years. You know, Deion, now he's a college head coach. You know, Shedeur is about to be a draft pick, but most importantly, you know, the beard. The beard is here to stay.
In terms of Shedeur, it's interesting, isn't it, that you hear speculation, I use that word again, that he could go, you know, as high as the Giants at 3, or that he might not even go in the first round. I think most are linking him with Pittsburgh. What do you think, Jeff? Where's Shedeur where is he gonna end up tonight?
Yeah, Pittsburgh at 21. That's been a lot of the talk, and so that would be. I hate to group him with this guy, but that could be like an Aaron Rodgers type of slide. And, you know, I think watching back and listening to Shedeur from that piece back in 2019, I think the part that sticks out the most to me is him talking about the documentary piece and what it's like to watch himself back. And here 6 years later, that is still such a focus and talking point is what kind of personality will a team be getting in Shedeur Sanders, and the attachment, of course, of Deion. And really, you think, you know, all the way back to not just Trinity Christian Cedar Hill, but before that, you know, I asked Deion after Shedeur and Deion in Colorado came in and beat TCU a couple years back about that time. And he goes, oh, it goes all the way back to Little League. And so Deion's always been there. And so this will be a totally new experience being coached not by Deion. And I think a lot of teams are trying to rack their minds around how that will play out and how that will work.
Yeah, the personality, perceived flaws there may scare some away. We'll see. Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah, there's been a few mixed messaging too. You know, NFL Network's Tom Pelissero tweeted out a quote from an anonymous coach talking about it was the worst formal interview that he's ever had with the player. But Shedeur tweeted out today, a couple hours ago, said, "I'm built for whatever today may bring." That quote from your story, Jeff, that stuck out to me is now it's time to prove that the name is real. And when you get to the NFL level, you're going to find out pretty quickly.
Tomlin and the Steelers might be a good fit. Jeff, we got to run for now. We'll be back with you in just a few minutes. In fact, a draft profile now again with Jeff. The Cowboys might go cornerback from Michigan. Here's Jeff again with Star Telegram's Nick Harris.
The NFL draft will be here in no time, and the Cowboys own that 12th overall pick. Nick Harris back with some insight on how that pick might go, how Dallas might try to use it. We've seen the Cowboys go with a Michigan guy recently in the first round. Mozzie Smith didn't exactly pan out as they might have hoped right off the bat. Why do you think Will Johnson might be a better choice out of the Wolverines?
Yeah, Will Johnson is an interesting prospect in the sense that he did not have a healthy senior season. He's going to have a pro day just a week before the draft. He'll be fully healthy by then. A lot of teams, and the Cowboys are one of them, will be taking a look at how he runs. Can he get out to full speed like he did pre-injury? That's going to be a big thing for him. The Cowboys, they did have a formal meeting with him at the Combine in Indianapolis. And if it's a situation where the Cowboys trade back in the first round, pick up a couple of picks later in the draft, I think this is a guy who could be in play. Now, you would have to realize that there's probably not a reliability in the health department. Can you afford that with a guy like Trayvon Diggs not expected to be ready for the start of the season? You're still trying to figure out things at the corner spot. That's where things get dicey if you do draft Will Johnson.
Cornerback, certainly a position that makes a lot of sense for this Dallas franchise to address early in this draft.
Cowboys radio analyst and former Cowboys quarterback Babe Laufenberg has strong opinions about the Cowboys' upcoming draft, which again begins tonight. You'll hear from Babe on the other side of the break.
Back on our pre-draft special, just kind of hanging, just kind of talking
Chilling.
draft. Deuce Man and the G. G, back to you.
Well, we are fortunate enough we're friends with a lot of the media members in this market who like to come on our show. Babe Laufenberg is one of them, Cowboys radio analyst, former Cowboys quarterback. He loves this time of year, Mike. He always wants to come in, and there's no shortage of needs and voids this year for Dallas. We've talked a lot about that so far, and that's why the number 12 overall pick, it could be up for grabs.
The beauty of going 7 and 10 is you need help everywhere. So it's not a situation where you say, boy, we can't take that guy because we're loaded at defensive end or fill in the blank. So really anybody that comes up there at 12, and you never know when you're picking at 12. You kind of know if you're 2, 3, 4, but once you get past 5, and this year may even, once you get past 1, we won't know for sure. But I can assume Travis Hunter will not be available at 12.
Right.
But other than that, you just don't know.
What about some names, Babe? Any names that entice you there with that 12th pick?
Yeah, you're obviously going to get a good player there at number 12. Cowboys got Micah Parsons there a couple years back. But I always say all drafts are not created equal. You look at last year's draft, loaded with quarterbacks. 6 quarterbacks taken in the first 12 picks, right? All 6 of those quarterbacks last year would be the first pick in the draft this year. You look at the receivers, not a great receiver class this year. Last year, 3 receivers were taken in the top 10. Anyway, all 3 of those receivers would have been the first receiver taken in this draft. Although I don't know where you put Travis Hunter. I don't know if we call him a corner.
Yeah, what do we call him?
Or wide receiver, or both. So he's a little bit of that. But here's a guy I'd like to see him get. It won't be in the first round. You don't want him in the first round. Cam Shedeur, right? UT fans saw him just run wild over him. You talk about the Cowboys don't have an identity. He would bring an identity. Now, you're going to need another back to go with him. But I love Cam Shedeur. I mean, you watch your guy. He's unrelenting. 4'6", 540. So you say, wow, he's not a speed guy. Cowboys had 4 plays of over 20 yards by their running back room. The entire running back room had 4 plays of over 20 yards. Cam Shedeur had 20 plays last year at Arizona State, over 20 yards.
Wow.
So he may not be a speed demon, but he can pick up some yards. I love him.
Babe loves him. All right, Shedeur Sanders, he's one of the most intriguing names in this draft, if not the most intriguing. What do you like about his game, Babe? How do you think it will translate into NFL? I know some Cowboys fans still out there somehow want to get him, but where do you think he'll ultimately wind up as well?
Well, he won't wind up here.
Right.
I do know that. When I look at Shedeur, and I saw a lot of him, I watched a lot of Colorado football because my son went to Colorado, was actually a student assistant coach there. And so anyway, I've watched it, so we text during games, and I've watched a lot of Shedeur. The thing I think about Shedeur, high floor, lower ceiling than you want if you're talking about a franchise quarterback. I think he's going to be a good pro, but his arm strength, average, athleticism, probably a little below average in terms of maneuverability. So that doesn't scream top 10 pick to me. Now, that being said, everything else about him you love. I mean, unflappable, calm, cool,
Carries
collected.
himself in the right way.
He's been since 6 years old, right? He's been around Deion Sanders.
He gets it,
So,
yeah.
So nothing's going to be too big for him in that sense. I just don't know, again, if he's got that talent, if he's got that wow factor that you want to take up top. I mean, obviously, he's going to get drafted somewhere, probably get taken in, well, he will get taken in the first round. Let me just tell you, the quarterback I like, Tyler Shuck out of Louisville. Nobody's really talking about this guy. All I can tell you is I've watched a bunch of tape on him. Go back, folks, look at the game he played against Notre Dame, Tyler Shuck. It's spelled S-H-O-U-G-H, so don't look.
Don't be fooled, right?
No Tyler Shuck in
Don't
Louisville.
spell it phonetically.
But he is the guy that really intrigues me, really in the entire draft. Now, that doesn't mean he's the first pick. I'm just saying.
A name to keep an eye on.
Yeah, down the, somebody's going to get a really good quarterback. And he could be the second quarterback taken.
Will McClay has obviously had a lot of success when it comes to drafting players, especially in recent years. Do you feel like now more than ever this particular year, though, he really needs to hit on this draft?
Well, if you ask Will, I'm sure he has never said going into a draft, well, I really don't need to hit on this one.
Right,
we got guys. No, he's done a great job. Last couple drafts have not been as good, but he's really done a great job in draft. I know how hard he works, and they'll get good players out of this one. The only thing I want to say, and it's not necessarily Will, people jump in to that draft, coaches, owners, and they
Everyone
get their
has a little
opinions.
bit of a
Yeah,
say.
so it's not, Will doesn't sit on this emperor's throne and make the decision. You know, it's kind of communal. But second round, you can't take Randy Gregory. Second round, you can't take Kelvin Joseph. Both those guys had red flags that said, do not draft me. And they drafted him, and they got bit in the rear end. So now, if you take a guy in round 5, 6, 7, great. Got character issues, great. Well, if it doesn't work, we move on. You can't give up a second round pick like that on those two.
So stay away from those character issues, says Babe Laufenberg.
Love listening to Babe
talk,
especially about quarterback play, because he studies it very closely. Because quarterback expected to go #1 overall tonight, Cam Ward of Miami to the Tennessee Titans. We're back with more on our draft special after this.
To Fox 4's NFL Draft Preview. The Deuce with you here in studio, along with the G. And again, we're a few hours away from the start of the NFL Draft. The Cowboys picking 12th overall. We're all on pins and needles waiting to see what that selection will be.
Frisco Lone Star's Ashton Jeanty was the runner-up for the Heisman. Boise State running back won the Doak Walker, so he was back in DFW a few months ago to accept that. And that night, he was asked about the possibility of the Cowboys drafting him.
I think it would be, a great opportunity for me and, for the Cowboys if, they take that chance.
Early on, as people started to prognosticate about this draft, you'd hear Jeanty connected to the Cowboys, but now he almost certainly will be gone, Sam, by number 12. Most have him going to Jacksonville at 5, but he's going to be an excellent pro for somebody if, again, his great college career is any indication. Jeff talked about it earlier, Sam, the fact that the Cowboys could trade back to end up a little lower in round 1 and maybe still have a running back available there. Omarion Hampton from North Carolina is a guy that's often mentioned, but I think they're most likely to go after a guy in the 2nd or even 3rd round.
And that makes sense, as we said, just because there's a lot more talent in those middle rounds in terms of running back.
Rico is gone.
Rico is gone. And remember, there was a time last season where even fans were like, you know what, this could be our lead back. He eclipsed the 1,000-yard mark for the season. First 1,000-yard rusher the Cowboys had since Tony Pollard, and they do have a running back room problem right now. Babe highlighted that stat. Cowboys had just 4 plays of over 20 yards for the entire season. You got to fix that. You got to have a run game, and I know that's something Shoddy wants to focus on.
Got to fix the run game. Part of that is the running backs. Part of that is the offensive line. Remember the names Trevion Henderson from Ohio State, and as I mentioned earlier, Caleb Johnson from Iowa. Those are guys who could be there in the later rounds if the Cowboys decide to go offensive, or I should say running back, in the second or third round. We'll see where they go in that regard. Tonight they did pick up a couple of veterans, Sanders and Williams, as well during this offseason. Okay, we're back with our predictions. Will the Cowboys go with at number 12? We'll have those answers after this. And with the G, and J-Dog joins us again from the Star.
Special guest with you, Jeff.
Jay, who you got there?
We have Rowdy, and obviously Rowdy has some inside intel into the real J-Dog, Jerry Jones. So Rowdy, who's the pick? I can't hear you. Well, one more time. You're not. You got to speak up, Rowdy. Give me a motion. Okay. All right,
we're not getting it.
We're not getting anything from Rowdy. We're not getting anything from Rowdy. I thought before we came on he was making a receiver motion. But
everybody else is in that draft room. He might as well be. Some final words now about which direction the Cowboys may go in round 1. Again, number 12 overall. Most mocks have them taking a wide receiver. Just to be contrary, my prediction is this. I say they go defensive back. They go cornerback if he's still there. That would be Will Johnson, the 2-time All-America from Michigan. There are injury concerns. There's a foot issue there that maybe scares Dallas away. And again, many mocks have Johnson already gone at 12. But there are Diggs injury issues as well. Firming things up at corner, to me, would make sense. Jeff, what do you think?
I will go with the guy we talked on earlier in the show, Ted McMillan. If he is still there, the wide receiver out of Arizona. If not, I would love to see the Cowboys trade back, and I think in that case, maybe they wind up with one of the many talented offensive linemen. You know, we talked about Shedeur. We've said that would never happen. But I just want to put it on record. Could you imagine? We heard Jerry a few months ago, point over to Brian Schottenheimer and said, "This is the biggest risk you could take." Could you just imagine getting Shedeur in here and he's like, "No. This is the biggest risk you could take." That would be quite the spectacle.
Maybe he will shock us, guys. Who knows? I'm going with an obvious pick that's been mentioned in the show already, Matthew Golden out of Texas. Little background, he ran a 4.29 in the 40 at the Combine. Fastest among all receivers, second fastest overall time, impacted special teams as well. He did an interview with Rich Eisen. He's from Texas, played 2 years at Houston, his final one at UT. He said it would be a blessing to play for the Cowboys. That's one of the many teams he met with. I'm going with Matthew Golden.
I've seen mocks that say wide receiver, running back, cornerback, safety, maybe even a tight end from Penn State. Who knows where the Cowboys will go? Maybe they'll trade back a little bit as well. We'll see. Jeff Kolb at the Star, thanks very much. We'll see you starting on Fox 4 News at 4 and through Free for All when we wrap things up tonight at 10:30. Thanks for joining us here on our pre-draft special. We'll see you again soon on Fox 4 News.